Hi, Sherilyn.
Hi.
That was really interesting, and I am going to second Dr. Sersing and say that I really enjoyed reading your thesis, and especially the interweaving of the theory with the creative. I'm gonna go with the theory part because that is my special interest. You know that. But I did enjoy the fact that you sort of also entwined a couple of different strings of theory. You talk about Spengler's the trauma trifecta, but you also connect that with post-colonial theory and the reality of the other traumas that women in the Bahamas face, which is, poverty or discrimination or colorism and things like that. So I thought that was really, really interesting. But you also differentiate the Bahamian experience from the Caribbean and the African American experience, right? Because you bring in Toni Morrison, but you also make the point that the Bahamian experience of trauma and then the working through the trauma through creative writing, like you are doing, is a different, unique experience. Could you talk a little bit about that, about how it is unique from the Caribbean experience, from the African American experience, as you envision it through your writing?
Well, to be perfectly honest, when I read those two bodies of work, Breath, Eyes, Memories, and Here Comes the Sun, I have a lot of what I'm writing is what I've witnessed or what I've experienced. And so as I was reading those pieces of work, I realized that parts of me was missing, right? There is a allusion to nature in Breath, Eyes, Memories. There is a cultural kind of protection and nationalism, and Here Comes the Sun that's intertwined within the narrative. Those things are not as significant or as important to me. You know, those things in my experience and having gone through some of these violations, you know, I didn't rely on nature. Nature wasn't a source of hope for me because, to be honest, within the community of the ghetto, quote unquote ghettos, there is no nature that you can lean on. There is no field that you can run through and be free. So for me, it's what is significant to my experience as a Black Bahamian woman. What would I lean on? What tools would I have within the confines of my culture that would lend to my healing? And you would see that in the other two bodies of works. The actual trauma isn't actually addressed. It's highlighted, it's mentioned, but whether or not the protagonists actually come to a place where they're not trying to escape it or they're not trying to avoid it, that's not seen. And so the difference in this particular, in No Shadow of Turning, is that there is an intervention. There is the intervention of a therapist. There is the intervention of these different characters that help the protagonist to really and truly unpack. Like, she's able to see why she has certain pathologies, why she's addicted to pornography, why she's addicted to certain types of pornography, you know, why the violence, like why is she having these anxiety attacks? All of these things are unpacked. They're all unraveled and dissected, where the other works did not do that. So those are the things that I wanted to really focus on. Is we have to end the cycle of being silent. We have to end the cycle of avoiding. And that's the whole idea of the piece.
Just a point of, I think I'm just going to re-articulate something that you said. So regarding Dr. Dacre's question, it's not then so much that this piece of the African diaspora and this piece, you know, the African American and the wider Caribbean versus Bahamian experience are so different in actuality in terms of what's happening, the absence of the field and what have you. But what your work does then is push this forward an agenda of healing in ways that utilize those resources that are available, that are perhaps typically not being engaged in other spaces. So, and even in the Bahamas necessarily, but in your work, you're advocating for that such that your protagonist makes use of and differentiates ultimately the experience from her self-identity and her identification. So in that way, it's sort of, quite innovative.
Thank you.
So congratulations for that. Yes, it thrusts forward the idea of how else we might proceed, even as we see the absence of those kinds of utilization of resources that would promote healing.
Yes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
I want to thank you for a well-written thesis.
Thank you.
It's very interesting work. I noted that each section, most of the sections, they have a kind of religious quotation as a kind of introduction at the beginning. So I was wondering talking about women's the whole idea of sexual abuse, trauma, and and silence about those topics. How did you reflect on how the religious context in the Bahamas might have contributed to those silences due to a culture of taboo, religious taboo, not talking about the whole idea of sex as sin, for example?
Yes, yes. So I touch on that in the rewrite, just like really explicitly. The protagonist's daughter has had seizures, and later on will be diagnosed with autism. And here is where the religion can be damning. This protagonist believes that her sin has caused her daughter's disease. She believes that because she was complicit, she believes that she was complicit in the sexual violation. She sees her addiction to pornography and all these things as sin. And so the religion or the culture of religion that she's believing in is not really it's not really how she's interpreting it. This is what she's been taught, that it's your deeds. Her grandmother says it's your deeds, And so when she sees this happening, she immediately feels the guilt of her religion. She feels the burden of her religion instead of using it as a tool for forgiveness and healing and being able to voice what she's gone through. She sees it as a curse. She sees herself being punished. And so that's the narrative within our space, how we use religion to define, violate, to explain or to promote violations to women. You think about the marital rape law and the controversy of that, using religion in a way, interpreting it in a way that's damning on the psyche of a woman. These are the things, that's exactly why I wanted to use these scriptures to kind of redefine how we even look at that. For example, in the first chapter, I used the scripture that God gives no gift, no bad gift. All his gifts are good. And here you see Regina, the protagonist's mother, who sees Camilla, the protagonist, as a curse. She sees her not as a gift, but as something that's bad or a burden in her life. And it's just how are we using religion to fashion the way we treat each other, the way we see ourselves, and the way we eventually heal from some of these trauma. That's important in this space because religion is a big thing in our space.
Thank you.